Judy was boring.
Hello.
Then Judy discovered ChumbaCasino.com.
It's my little escape.
Now Judy's the life of the party.
Oh, baby, mama's bringing home the bacon.
Whoa, take it easy, Judy. The Chumba life is for everybody. So go to ChumbaCasino.com and play over 100 casino-style games. Join today and play for free for your chance to redeem some serious prizes. ChumbaCasino.com. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus. Terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
I don't pay attention to this anymore simply because I think 9 in 10 of us get our check direct deposited from our employer, which means we don't get to see FICA. We go to see what's, so taxes taken out. We look at it and go, okay, here's my bulk taxes. We don't see the breakdown. We don't really pay attention to it all that much, but unemployment insurance is in there as well. And the idea is to protect us from temporary income loss due to the loss of employment. COVID kind of screwed things up too. And not only the graft has really screwed things up. Our unemployment compensation system in Ohio went broke in 2009 during the Great Recession. We borrowed like $3.3 billion from the feds to keep it flowing. And the loan wasn't paid off until 2016. Cost us more than $250 million in interest. 4 years after that, COVID hits. It went broke again. This time we borrowed $1.5 billion to keep it afloat. And so we use all of our state revenue to administer an unemployment system that is arguably one of the worst in the United States. We're a top 10, I think, when it comes to a weekly maximum of $530 over 26 weeks. That's the good end. You got to pay taxes on that, obviously. But the system itself it's a mess, to say the least. Joining the show on 700 WLW is Jess Ward, and she's with NTUF, the National Taxpayers Union Foundation, talking about insurance reform. It's kind of a boring but important topic because it costs us so much damn money in Ohio. Jess, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you? Thanks for having me.
I'm doing fine. Sorry to depress anyone listening, going, well, I've never used unemployment insurance, or I haven't in a long time. That doesn't mean it's not an important thing. And so you guys at the National Taxpayers Union kind of sat down and figured out at least a better plan. You looked at it and kicked the tires on it. And so let's start at the beginning of this thing. The payroll tax itself is what?
So the payroll tax is implemented by the federal government as well as states. And you made a good point in your introduction in that a lot of people just have no clue what is coming out of their paychecks on a biweekly basis or a monthly basis. And so we really aimed to educate not only voters but also lawmakers on how this impacts not only employees and the employer. When we have fraudulent claims or we have overpayments or we have, people drawing benefits who shouldn't be, this impacts a business's rating, sort of like an insurance premium. And then they're continuing to pay more and more and more. And that's a cost to small businesses that is really getting out of control, frankly. And so what we wanted to do was sort of provide a roadmap, predominantly for lawmakers to say, this is what you can do in the state. I mean, are we able to address Social Security and Medicare that is also under the umbrella of the payroll tax? Certainly not. But there is something that state lawmakers can do. And it's, like you mentioned, going after unemployment. And unfortunately, Ohio does some things not so great. They do some things well, but we have targeted states in our roadmap, essentially that those states have had a willingness to make some changes. And Ohio has made some changes in the last few years. And recently a bill was proposed in your state, SB 116, which would actually index unemployment benefits. So essentially, if the economy is doing well, unemployment rates are low, then your eligibility would be less. If unemployment is high, then the number of weeks that you would be eligible would be greater. And it's a great piece of legislation. I know that it hasn't moved in Ohio, which is unfortunate, but it was very successful in Florida under Governor Rick Scott. And I hope to see Ohio move SB 116.
Well, we'll see what happens. I think there's another element of this, and that is the sheer waste in the system itself. Ours in Ohio, it's a giant mess between financing and claim spikes and fraud and bad service from disaffected bureaucrats and antiquated computer systems. We took the money and we didn't reinvest in things, and that also bottlenecks it. That's outside the scope of the tax. That's got to be reformed as well.
It absolutely does. I will say that Ohio, one of the things it does well is their unemployment system is paired with a company that essentially runs prison records against those who are claiming unemployment. So they have renewed that contract, which is a good thing. But recently, there has been a spike in Ohio with fraud, and to the point where I think the UI department is they're freezing accounts in Ohio as of a month or two ago, which is also a good step. When anytime fraud is suspected, they've been freezing accounts. But yeah, there's a lot of waste, and it's an enormous cost to small businesses. In addition to my role with NTUF, I also own 3 small businesses in Wisconsin, and it's impactful. Every time you hire someone, of course, you're adding to the payroll and you're adding these types of costs. And it's becoming really costly for businesses to continue hiring with the types of waste that's happening.
Jess, I love the low bar of expectations we have. You said, well, at least Ohio, here's what they do is really smart. You know, they have a list of everyone that's in prison, and then they compare that. They compare that list of people who apply and go, yeah, I think like a kid for an 8th grade project in his computer science class could probably come up with a way to do that. But here in the real world, we look at that as like, wow, look at government. It's doing great. We've set the bar so low for expectations. This is what we wind up getting.
Well, I'll tell you what, Scott, there are a lot of states. In fact, I was just on the radio in Iowa who, in fact, don't do that.
Wow.
So you'd be surprised.
No, yeah. I'm not surprised at all. It's just funny what we've settled for, right? And we're the one funding all this. It's coming out of our check. And I think that's also, I don't think it's part of the design, but as I said at the open, over 9 in 10 of us have direct deposit. We don't see the pay stub every week, it'd be a hell of a lot different, I think, if they gave you your gross pay and then said, okay, hold it in your hand. Now we're going to take the money out that you owe in tax. This is for FICA. This is unemployment taxes. This is dental insurance. This is right. And I think it opened a lot of eyes, but I guess.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah. Ignorance is bliss.
You bring up an interesting point about direct deposit. And here's a recommendation that Ohio should do. Ohio currently will put unemployment benefits on a prepaid debit card. What's problematic about that is, of course, then we're not verifying with the employer whether or not that person's receiving direct deposit, but only 3% of people in the nation still receive a paper paycheck. Mm-hmm. The need for prepaid unemployment debit cards is silly, and the system is riddled with fraud, and we really need to do away with that. If at the very least, when someone applies for unemployment benefits, we should be verifying with that business whether or not they utilize direct deposit. And if they are, there should be no reason why someone is getting prepaid benefits on a debit card to be able to use that. And unfortunately, Ohio is currently doing that, and it needs to be changed. Yeah.
Well, it's a tremendous waste. And people point out to the welfare queens and everything else. And I get that. That certainly is a huge part of the problem. But that's small compared to the fraud and waste at the vendor end. That's where the real money. Now you're getting to the real money there.
Yep, you're absolutely right. And at NTU, there's really nobody talking about this either. You look at survey study. No one cares about unemployment insurance compensation. But look how much. Just another example of the baked-in government waste and inefficiencies we just take for granted because most people don't use unemployment insurance. Yeah, you're correct. They look at it as just the cost of doing business. Who cares if there's fraud and the waste that's accompanied with it? I couldn't agree more, and so that's why we decided to take on this topic that some people might make some people's eyes glaze over.
Right.
But it's important, and lawmakers need to understand what they can do in their state to solve some of these problems, because the solutions that we're offering are not rocket science; they're common sense. And so we hope at NTU our second phase of this whole initiative is to hit the road and get talking to lawmakers and hopefully get some legislation moving through state houses that will have somewhat of an impact on this.
Yeah, Jess Ward is here, and she's with the National Taxpayers Union Foundation, talking about unemployment insurance reform. I've talked about this a couple times on the show. It's one of those things, this giant albatross we take for granted. We don't even pay attention to it. So few people use it, but it is rife with waste. In Ohio, among the most wasteful states, and that's been the case for a long, long time. You talk about, getting money for other projects and things and raising taxes, and well, let's look at reforming something like this, where you could literally save hundreds of billions of dollars that just get wasted over lifetimes. One may say, okay, well, why don't we privatize this? But that really doesn't even pass the sniff test, does it? Because if you have how does a private company make money in selling unemployment compensation to someone? Because, well, you have something called the moral hazard there, and that is the ability of me, the policyholder, to simply go, well, wait a minute, I'm paying the insurance. If I get myself fired, I'm getting the money I'm paying back, and so no one's going to touch that. So you can't. This has to be government administered.
Yes, it does, and we looked at that. Could that be potentially a solution where you treat unemployment insurance like you would any other type of insurance and privatize it? And I agree with you. It's not something that is realistic, and that was part of what we wanted to do here, was provide actual solutions that lawmakers could implement, where people wouldn't look at us, consider it to be a ridiculous solution. So yes, privatization is something that we considered, but you're absolutely right. If you get fired, you have very little interest in contributing to the system, and that's also part of the issue too. Is you have people who are losing their jobs, for violating handbook or not showing up to work, etc., and they're still being awarded benefits, and that it's a real problem. And then, of course, the employer will go through the process of challenging that employee's eligibility, and they're losing by some commission. Whether it be an administrative law judge or a commission within the department, that tends to really favor the employee, even if they were fired for merit. And you're only, of course, eligible for benefits if you were fired at no fault of your own or let go at no fault of your own. And we're finding that there are a lot of rulings that are happening that are really benefiting the employee, and they should not have been eligible for benefits. So we need some recourse put into place for businesses to be able to fight those, silly claims.
Yeah, it's really interesting is, you can't privatize unemployment compensation insurance, yet people who are talking about reform kind of always bring that up. And yet the other big money waster is health insurance, and no one brings up that it's the exact opposite. We should get businesses out of the business of providing health insurance as a reason to employ someone, or as a lure to employ someone, because it's messed the whole system up. Whereas with unemployment compensation, we shouldn't do that because of the reasons we just pointed out. We've got it backwards.
Yes, we've got it backwards. I couldn't agree with you more.
Well, you're a small business owner. I don't know if you provide benefits. My wife is too, and she doesn't either. But I don't even know how you navigate that. Quite honestly, it's such a. But people expect it. You need that to lure good people, and unfortunately, we put that businesses in a position now to be administrators of healthcare and fighting to get good employees and the like. And really, businesses should be out of it. It costs them too much. It costs us too much. The system is rife with waste, and I know I'm preaching to the choir on this one, and we'll save that for another time. But unemployment insurance in Ohio is